Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of USTOA Tech Talks. Thank you for joining us for what promises to be an insightful and practical discussion on agentic and operational AI to dive into practical applications for travel companies. Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming the way businesses across industries operate, and the travel sector is no exception. As travel companies look for ways to stay competitive and deliver better experiences, AI has quickly moved from being a future concept of an everyday business tool. It's no longer about experimenting on the sidelines. AI is now driving real improvements in customer service, operational efficiency, and scalability across our industry. We're very fortunate to be joined by our speakers, Todd Sullivan, CEO, and Will Weber, CRO at Humanic, an AI native BPO for travel companies. Spun out of their group travel company, FlightFox, Humanic builds AI agents that automate routine tasks and free staff to focus on high-value service. With experience managing over 1 million customer support messages, they now partner with tour operators, airlines, OTAs, TMCs, and others to enhance the customer experience while remaining cost competitive. They will cover how AI can streamline operations, support staff in delivering high-value work, and create more seamless travel experience. To guide today's conversation, we're pleased to welcome our moderator, Steven Borukhin, CEO of Downtown Travel. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our TED Talk partner, Crum & Foster, for their continued support. With that, I'll turn it over to Steven to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you, Will and Todd, for helping us out here and giving us some insight into this important topic. I won't waste any time. I'll kick it off. So you guys started as FlightFox, which I obviously know very well as an agency that services student travel and humanitarian travel. And now you guys have bridged that into a super powerful tool called Humanic that kind of basically manages AI, right? Or AI support originally for your own business and now for other travel business. Can you guys just give us a little bit of background about how Humanic came about and how it's helped FlightFox and kind of the volume of support that Humanic is providing to just FlightFox?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, everyone. Firstly, thanks, Steven. It all started, FlightFox started because I love to travel. I was also a software engineer, and so you put the two together and you have the great idea to start a travel business, which has pros and cons to it, but it is what it is. And I mention that because, what we realized in FlightFox is although we started a travel business, which was meant to be all about travel, it quickly became largely about support. Also accounting, but that's a story for another day. But we got deep into the support, just realizing how important it was to the perception that customers had of the business, whether it was their first impression of us or the last impression of us, and then just realizing our growth and that the value they received was largely pinned to the quality of support we delivered to them. And we began in the consumer travel space, which, as many of you know, is pretty unforgiving. If we saved a customer $200 and they expected $300 in savings, we could get a negative review from it. And so that really, made us quite sensitive to support and think about it a lot. Once that realization really set in, we became obsessed with NPS, so Net Promoter Score. And we started to grade every project that we ran based on how we thought it would impact NPS. And so, doing that, looking at what customers said to us, what they said they wanted, what we thought they wanted, we started to get a better appreciation for that and for support and what drove customers' perceptions of us. And that really, kicked it all off. This all started pre-AI. So we only had the human teams to work with, and very quickly you realize the limitations there. So it all boils down to what the customer wants to start with support. And what they want is for you to answer the phone immediately. They want an expert to answer the phone, and they want that expert to solve the problem virtually immediately as well. And as we all know, it's difficult to scale human teams to do that, especially in travel where the volumes can spike 10 to 100 times on any day when there's an emergency of some sort. And fast forward to Humonic, as we started to use AI about 4 years ago in FlightFox, we improved the way that our human experts responded to customers. And then we eventually started Humonic because AI unlocked that ability to finally respond to customers instantly and solve their problems very quickly, and then scale with these spikes. And so that's where we are today with Humonic, trying to use AI to finally give customers what they want with travel support.
Think just taking a step back as far as the different types of AI that you guys have seen in travel and kind of how it impacts travel. Can you guys just briefly talk about the difference between agentic AI and then operational AI and how you see that, I guess, impacting a travel seller?
Yeah, so keeping it quite simple, the way we think of it is operational AI fits into the process somewhere, maybe augments the humans on the team or within the process, creates benefit partway along the process, whereas agentic AI is end-to-end and handles something in some travel-related process from start to finish. If we want to use some examples, let's use support as the example. So originally in FlightFox, we were using AI to improve our humans' messages. And that didn't just mean spelling and grammar. It meant detecting all of the questions the customer was asking, making sure we're answering all of them. It meant detecting passive aggressiveness and solving for that. Whereas agentic AI would actually just entirely answer the customer end to end. And so that's the way we think of it. And, going a little deeper on that, we do think it's best to start with operational AI in virtually every case, get a real feeling for where AI can solve problems before moving to agentic AI.
Can you talk about just given your current experience at where do you see kind of AI's current limitation to replacing, I guess, humans? Because I think a lot of companies and a lot of just people in general out there, they hear AI and they're like, is my job at risk? Like, where do you guys see the limit to where AI currently is? And like, what in your world have you seen still kind of needs to remain human driven?
It still feels like very, very early days. So what we think is happening now is AI is fairly good at augmenting humans, so helping humans in their jobs. So let's say with data analysis and reporting, with support, with accounting and reconciliations, with sales. But, agentic AI especially is very early. And so, where that will probably go from here is that agentic AI will become easier, especially for non-technical staff. But right here and right now, we believe that operational AI and really helping humans in their current jobs rather than replacing them is still the reality.
Yeah, I think too, just to add in on that, there's certain workflows that I think, are solvable with agentic AI in its current form, but it's really got to be drilled down into one specific use case. If you're sort of thinking or expecting the AI to just come in and handle all sorts of different tasks that a human agent would, I think the limitations are still pretty high there. So that's where operationally, I think, like Todd mentioned, that's really the place to start with AI in its current form.
So I think it's a good segue to kind of talk about what are like the best practices of actually introducing any sort of AI into the workflow of an agency. Can you guys talk a little bit about your own experiences in FlightFox? Because I'm sure you didn't just take every operation and immediately throw AI at it. So what would be kind of like, the best way that you guys see to start Like, where would you start, and which operations do you feel like are best managed at this point?
There's quite a gray area between genuine AI and then just code and engineering. And it can be easy sometimes to try and force AI into areas where just traditional code and automated processes work better, especially in travel. And so I think the first best place to start is to personally be up to date with what's possible with AI. And so LLMs have been around for quite a while now. We've all used ChatGPT and Gemini and so forth in our daily lives. Some of us have replaced Google searches with ChatGPT and are just really getting a feeling for what's possible there. But that extends now into operator, so agentic frameworks that can be used personally at the moment. I think also looking at what others are doing, seeing what's impactful and what's possible, because probably everyone on the call now realizes the promises of the AI still are outweighing the reality, especially with agentic AI. So if you look at what other people are doing and what's actually being done in production out there, I think that can give quite a good idea of what's reality versus the promises that I talked about. So really starting with personal usage, bringing that across into simple agentic usage at work, and then looking what the leaders say in travel are doing right now, putting all of that together and getting a more realistic perspective on what's possible.
And for FlightFox particularly, where was the first place that you guys introduced AI?
Funnily enough, the very first place we used it was with spelling and grammar of our messages from humans. And you might think, well, spelling and grammar tools existed a long time before that, where you're just using AI just for the sake of it. And the reality was that the spelling and grammar tools before were quite rigid, had a lot of trouble with even something like an airport code, just creating a lot more work for our human agents than it was solving. But LLMs brought about a much more intelligent way to handle that. And that quickly evolved into not just looking at spelling and grammar, but making sure we're answering all questions and then detecting sentiment, moving based on sentiment, moving our support cases to the top of the queue, and just chipping away at improving our customer support that way. And that's how we did it, all the way to now trying to solve entire problems end to end with agentic AI.
Thank you. Internally, did you guys face any backlash from your staff when you guys were introducing AI? And like, were there any feelings like, I'm scared that this is going to replace me? How did you go about like kind of mitigating their fears, and then did it help to open up those employees' time to do, maybe more interesting things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the fear was short-lived when they realized how bad it was in the beginning. So at first, there were a lot of complaints because of the problems it introduced, and it introduced a lot more work. And then once they saw the problems, I think that fear subsided. But, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago now, and a lot has developed in that time. And I think the fear comes back in waves. But what we've tried to do mostly, and what we truly believe, is that what LLMs and AI agents are giving us the ability to do now is to replace the monotonous work. So it's the work that people genuinely, in most cases, don't love. And it allows them to do the higher level work, the higher agency work. And it provides a better promotion path within the company doing this. So it would be equivalent to bringing on junior staff to handle that monotonous work, but instead we're bringing on AI agents which help with profitability, which give us the ability to handle promotions internally a bit more. And of course, we actually need to act on that. Just using words within the team wasn't enough in the early days. And so by us actually doing that and creating higher agency tasks for the original support team, I think that has helped quite a lot.
Yeah. And just to give one real example of how this played out at FlightFox is a lot of our what we call travel experts, which are the agents that support the travelers during their trips. they would have to make a lot of calls to airlines or hotels for various tasks. And so that's really where we started to build voice agents to automate all of that. So, like Todd said, just taking away a task that they really didn't enjoy doing, sitting on the phone, waiting on hold, you know, everyone's experience calling an airline and getting a terrible result and having to hang up and call again. And so for us, that actually was a very big positive for the team at FlightFox. So they could then focus on building better itineraries or providing better online support versus having to spend, you know, half the day on the phone dealing with really tedious and annoying calls. So just a bit of a practical example there. I'm not suggesting that the first step should be to jump to building voice agents. It's definitely a lot of work involved in that, but in general, things that free up agent time to do more enjoyable work, I think at FlightFox we saw that be a net positive for our agents.
Sorry, should have mentioned this in the beginning, but USTOA folks, please feel free to write any questions you have or any follow-ups to anything. We can answer questions as we go. But to tag on to what you just said, Will, you know, a lot of times, and I think everyone on this call has experienced moments where we might not be able to help our passenger directly with what they're calling us about. Like we might be waiting for a carrier to respond or a DMC to respond. And a lot of what that passenger might be looking for is kind of just a little bit of hand-holding, a little bit of empathy. Can you speak to, I guess, how far along AI is in kind of that empathy factor and that hand-holding factor, but then also how far along is it with the accuracy piece, right? Because we need to always make sure that if we're putting something in writing, if we're even delivering it over the phone, we want it to be as accurate as possible. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, I'll give this one a shot. So this might be a bit of a hot take, but I truly believe the LLMs at scale are better at accuracy and empathy than humans are right now. And I mean at scale and on average. And you can test this out. You can get into ChatGPT now and try and get it into an argument and be rude to it, do whatever you want, do it for 8 hours straight, and it'll still be quite positive, polite. You know, empathetic might be a little bit of a stretch, but it can be. And then, you know, accuracy is another interesting one. We've all heard of hallucinations, but LLMs are generally, if you give them the right data, they'll be very, very accurate. And there can be hallucinations along the way, especially in the voice agents that Will mentioned. But when we're coming from a base of humans doing monotonous work that is not necessarily that enjoyable and which has its own risks in it, and those manifest in lack of empathy and accuracy as well. So while accuracy and empathy are definitely topics, I think the LLMs do really, really well at those. And where they fall over and what we've noticed the most and we struggle with the most are the edge cases. And we call them edge cases, but it's not really the right term because it seems to be the common case. And what I'm talking about is someone calling up, having multiple packs, multiple destinations. They also want to ask about an upgrade for one of the packs, and this happens and that happens. And just combining all of this together just seems to be quite common. And that's where the AI agents struggle a little with. And maybe not the agents so much, but the implementation of multiple agents to handle all of these different cases. That's where we find more the challenges rather than the accuracy and the empathy, for what it's worth.
Yeah, human in the loop is a good way as well to, which I think, you know, pretty much everyone that's got AI implemented in production has some human in the loop backup. So for us at FlightFox, that meant, you know, even if we preempted a message to the customer, we would have a human looking over it to double check accuracy, empathy, and making sure that, you know, the message has the same quality that if they were sending it themselves. So I think a lot of the benefits of human in the loop can cover for any cases where, you know, the AI might hallucinate or not have as empathetic of a message as you might want. So
And to add to that, not just human in the loop, but LLM as a judge. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can have an AI agent as the primary agent handling the support case. And if the detected sentiment is too low, it can go to a human in the loop. And if it moves on to wanting to post that message to the customer or reply to the customer, you can use an LLM as a judge to be a second check on the sentiment of the message, the accuracy of the message. As a lot of people here probably know, if you overwhelm an AI agent with a very complicated prompt and a lot of tasks, the accuracy of that can reduce, and it can start to hallucinate a lot more. So if you have a multi-agent approach and one of those agents is purely an LLM as a judge to make sure quality and empathy and accuracy are high, that can be quite helpful as well.
I want to shift to the element of control. So I think a lot of folks are skittish on AI because they think they might lose control of certain operational tasks. The AI might become too smart in some instances and kind of go off course. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe your personal experiences with feelings of losing control, and if that was ever the case?
Yes, definitely, it's been the case, and we've of course had errors and issues and accidental cancellations and all of that. But it's all been in the name of advancement and improving it. I think what we've realized early on is that AI agents especially are best at handling the high volume, low complexity tasks. And if you try to keep things simple, you keep in control, get better results, and then you can start to chip away at the more complex tasks. But it is surprising, the LLMs seem to have less a mind of their own, and it becomes more about your implementation, handling complexities and edge cases. And I don't think we ever felt like we're losing control so much compared to we just didn't expect or visualize edge cases that become common cases and then handling them well. So, let's take an example. So we had one of our AI agents cancel a flight for a customer when they didn't want it canceled. So what happened was we'd given the AI agent the context of the leg of the flight that they wanted canceled. We made a voice call into the airline on behalf of the customer, to change that leg. And so the human agent from the airline asked about the return leg, and we hadn't put it in the context to the agent. And so the agent was too smart, like you suggested, Stephen, and said, "Oh no, that leg doesn't sound like one we want." And the human agent said, "Should I cancel it then?" And the AI agent said, "Sure." But of course, we just didn't give it as context. And we very quickly learned from that. We got a human to solve it and go back and rebook. We lost a little bit of money there, but it was all in the name and the spirit of advancement and making the AI agent better. So just saying all of that to say we weren't necessarily losing control. We just hadn't planned for it, and it's part of the process.
Thank you. I think for the next kind of section of questions, I want you guys to more think of yourselves as just FlightFox, and Humonic didn't really exist, because I'm sure, like myself, everyone on this call kind of gets bombarded with a lot of AI solutions. And I think there's kind of a general, confusion or questions about where to start, how to start, when to start. So I guess let's just start with, at what point in the FlightFox journey, if there was no Humonic, would you have started to pursue AI solutions, and for which of the operations?
Thinking about FlightFox as a travel business first and foremost, and ignoring AI for a moment, we were just always looking for improvements, profitability improvements, customer experience improvements, team morale improvements. And so as a business owner and leader, you look at all of the problems that you're trying to solve, all of the opportunities, and you prioritize them by impact. And maybe you adjust for effort that it would take to create that impact, but we started there. And so by starting there, that's when you start to look at where the opportunities are for AI. And for us, I mentioned right at the start of this call, running a travel business for us very much became about support and accounting. We didn't want it to be that way. We didn't want to run an accounting business, but as you know, in lower margin travel, especially dealing with airfare, we have a lot of money flowing through the business. We have to track everything perfectly to the cent. And, a lot of problems arise from that. And then similarly with support, although we built a beautiful UI, we connected with many APIs and had it all working perfectly, support became the big issue. And that's what customers' perceptions became of us. And so those issues, forgetting AI, forgetting tech even, they became the top priorities of the company. And when we got to support, we realized the limitations of scaling human teams. That's when it became obvious that AI could play an impactful role. So, very early on with AI, you try to force AI into different places and you realize, wait a sec, this isn't going to solve a real business problem, a top 5 business problem we're having right now. And once you get past that, you just start to try to be intellectually honest with yourself about solving these real problems and not just playing around with AI. And that's how we approached it with FlightFox. We wanted desperately to use AI agents for accounting. And this started 3-4 years ago, but they just weren't ready. And we would think about all of the accounting problems in the business, the thousands and thousands of reconciliations per month. And you just realize that might just be a traditional coding problem, scaling a human finance team problem. And only now we're seeing a lot more advancement in AI agents with accounting. So long story short, just treating the business problems as business problems first, trying to have the greatest impact and using AI where it makes the most sense.
Would you say that initially integrating supporting AI versus selling AI is the way to go, or it's business dependent?
Just to clarify, you mean selling AI to the customer as a feature?
Meaning like the chatbot that actually makes a booking and helps you sell versus the post booking.
Yeah, for us, it was definitely a lot more about post booking, just because we'd come to realize how impactful that was on customers' perceptions of the business and their experience. The booking itself, that's an interesting one because billions of dollars have been invested in booking travel already. The UIs are very good. And we've had this conversation a lot about using AI with booking. There are travel companies coming up now that will give you an LLM style prompt to help you book the flight. And there's, when you think through this, you think about how good UIs are. Let's take flights, for example, with Google Flights. When you do a search with Google Flights, you make a lot of micro decisions about what you're seeing. The results are presented very quickly to you. You've got airlines, you've got departure times, you've got number of stops, you've got layovers, and you make all of those decisions and you very quickly get to your ideal flight. Simulating that or replacing that with an LLM right now feels like a step backward. And that may change soon, but that is very much where our conversations have gone pre-booking and during the shopping process when we've discussed using LLMs there. And I think that's probably largely why we've focused on post-booking.
As we receive these emails and cold calls asking us to check out these new AI companies, can you just maybe discuss like what are kind of like the best couple kind of questions to quickly parse through where like where's the BS meter essentially? How can we quickly, understand whether or not this might be something that's actually going to work and help us do better business?
I think the quickest way to get through the BS is to see it working in production. And that's very different from seeing a demo. It's no secret anymore that it's very easy to create a demo of an AI agent, but very difficult to install, implement, and run it in production and see real impact. And so I think just asking to see the AI agent or whatever the solution may be in production with a real travel company or just any other company is really how to get through it immediately. I don't
So
know if
you
you have
wouldn't want to be the
anything.
guinea pig, in other words.
Depends on the problem in your business right now. So let's take FlightFox. Accounting was a top 2 problem for us, maybe the top 1 problem for us for a long time there. And we were willing to be the guinea pig with AI agents with accounting. But I think if it's not one of your top 3 problems and you're not seeing a lot of promising real world usage, then you should be quite pessimistic and skeptical of it, because just right now, where we are right now, this wasn't the case with tech, just traditional tech a couple of years ago, but where we are with AI right now, I think you need to be quite skeptical unless you're seeing results in production. The guinea pig thing is certainly, a possibility if you're feeling like being an early adopter, but I think that's going to really depend on how critical the problem is that you're trying to solve.
Yeah,
And
just to
then,
add into that, sorry, Stephen, just quickly to add in, we as a company with Humonic, we've taken more of a vertical approach to AI and going deep into travel. And I would be skeptical as well of horizontal players that do insurance and healthcare and other areas, and expect sort of them to be able to deliver similar results for travel because of the complexity. So coupled with what Todd said, I think there's a lot of horizontal AI players out there that want to get into travel companies, and they sort of expand their network of use cases for AI. But I think from what we've seen, and why we're going into a strictly travel vertical approach is it'd be very difficult for that type of company to come in and just understand the travel use case and the edge cases and all the complexities around it. So just add that in as something to look out for with horizontal players.
So I think a lot about having AI work well for you is having good inputs to give to the AI, right? And having it understand your business well. And there was a question posed about can the AI basically handle exact seat assignments, knowing the configuration of the plane that they're traveling? The customer is extremely keen on making sure that all 3 of the passengers who always travel together sit together. So I guess that goes to the question, what is kind of the best way to prepare, and what are some of the, I guess, resources a company should pull together in order to feed the AI as effectively as possible? And I guess going back to this question, this gentleman would like to know if AI can handle the 3 seats together.
So that's a really good example, and one we've spoken about and worked on quite a lot at FlightFox. So the immediate answer is anything is possible. Technically, you can use browser automation, you can use APIs, you can do anything there. But in the real world, firstly, you need enough volume to justify it. And seat assignments, if you're a large travel company, you would have the volume there to justify it. But then you get into the real world problems with seat assignments. And this may go off on a little tangent there, but seat assignments are pretty difficult right now. Often the seat map doesn't open up immediately. There's payments if you want to assign your seat. They'll hold seats up until a certain time period, whether it's 24 hours, 72 hours before departure. There's a lot of complication you need to deal with. And so we go back to, is this a top 3, top 5 problem in your business? Will it create a lot of impact for the effort it will take to handle all of those edge cases? And so, anything is possible, but it's really going to depend on the business, the the risk, the reward, the cost, the effort, all of that, whether you put the effort into it. And remember, the other alternative is always human-based. Can you have humans do that offline, virtual assistants for a lower cost with greater accuracy right now or not? But that's a good one because it's so difficult in the real world. If you talk to a non-travel person, if you talk to a horizontal player that Will was hinting at earlier, they will think that you just call an API, you give the 3 passenger names and you choose the 3 seats and it's done. But all of us in travel know that is absolutely not the case in practice. And so a really good example, because it's so simple in theory, and then the real world implementation is quite complicated.
Have you seen, as far as the customers who you've been selling Humonic to, have you guys seen any kind of difference between what has worked best for small, medium versus large businesses?
Yeah, definitely. And there's quite a bit of overlap, of course. We've all seen the horrible chatbots from 5, 6, 7 years ago, in the last few years. And so chatbots have a fairly, there's a negative connotation with them that it means a reduced customer experience. But that's starting to change now. If you configure the chatbot, if you have a very smooth human in the loop or escalation procedure, if you combine FAQs with the chatbot, that's really the place where it seems from a customer looking perspective where the easy wins are right now. There's also internal company work that can be done across both small and medium and large businesses. Let's say data analysis and reporting, leadership and coaching, which isn't just specific to travel businesses, but operational AI, definitely easier for smaller companies. Agentic AI is really still mostly in the realm of the larger companies who have the engineering resources to implement end-to-end and handle the edge cases. Do you have anything to add to that, Will?
No, yeah, I think like you said, there's a lot of overlap. But the bigger the company, most of the time they're doing the operational stuff plus some agentic stuff, and we've ran into bigger travel companies, mostly on the OTA side, that they've built their own AI agent and used us for the voice side of things to bring their text agent to voice, and so we've been in different parts of it, but yeah, I think it depends on your size and the engineering resources really that Todd was saying, that the bigger you are and you can throw more engineers at it, that's when agentic starts to make more sense. But for any company, I think the operational side, there's some quick wins that can be had where the customer experience doesn't suffer too much, if at all.
I want to go back to one of the things you guys said in the beginning about how NPS was your kind of North Star for guiding you. And there was a good question here. So at a certain point, your customers were used to having a human answer, right? And then at some point, probably without telling them, it changed to a bot, right? And so do you guys have any qualitative or quantitative evidence that there was no pushback from the customers? How was their reaction basically to that switch?
Yeah, that's a good one too, because they didn't know that there was a switch. Remember, we're talking a few years ago before there was any regulation around this. You might know that in the EU, they have the EU AI Act where you do have to announce a bot these days. And there's some vague language around that. But when we did it, so before we implemented any AI, we were using a templating system. And so our humans actually seemed more robotic than our AI responses did. And when I say a templating system, so if it was a common case, let's say a rebooking, we would present the human agent with a template to communicate the rebooking and the result of it to the customer. Whereas when you used an LLM, there could be a lot more variability in it. And so we never had anyone detect or suggest it was an LLM responding or augmenting the answer at all. With voice, that's different because it's still detectable. as good as voice AI is getting right now, you can tell it's a bot. You might go 10 seconds without realizing, but it's still detectable. So it's a bot straight away. And I think that's the difference between text, and who knows how long that will take with voice. But LLMs are good enough, especially in text, to be as good and as variable and as creative as the human bots, just with better accuracy and sometimes with hallucinations, which humans arguably
Yeah.
make as well.
I think too, the way that you prompt engineer the text agent to reply, you can certainly do it in a way that gets a more human reply than if you just write something very generic in ChatGPT and it spits out its sort of AI garbage that we've probably all experienced at some point. But that's where the prompt engineering, if you give it a role, give it specific examples of what to do, what not to do, you definitely can get um, the way that it responds in a much more human way than it sort of does out of the box if you just give it a very vague prompt and just have it reply in its sort of normal state. So prompt engineering, I think, is the best way to beyond what Todd mentioned, and it being better than, for us at FlightFox, the templating system that we had before.
And going specifically back to MPS, did you see any impact before and after?
Yeah, we did, but this is where it was, we were up against, let's say when we were just augmenting humans, we were up against realities of support where the customer, so it all becomes a problem when a flight's canceled and you have 100 plus people in the queue. When it's a quiet day, nothing's a problem, everything's great. So we were still working with the fundamental limitations that, although we were augmenting humans, when suddenly there are 100 people in the queue, a team of 10 couldn't respond instantly. And so we would see NPS movements, but I think more than anything, what that made us do was become quite questioning about our NPS methodology and how we recorded it. And, we could speak about this for hours and go down a real rabbit hole here, but in corporate travel where you have repeat customers, asking the NPS question, it can get quite stale. And there's that fear of reprisal that if someone rates you low when they come back to you 2 days later to book their next corporate trip, like how is that going to impact them? And you can tell them it's anonymous as much as you want, but we started to get a little more skeptical in our way of measuring, and any improvement we saw, we started to think it was because of that. And I only say that because we realized no matter what, the customer wants that instant answering, they want an expert on the phone, they want the quick result, and everything else is just, lipstick on a pig, basically. We did things like give our human support team profiles with a larger photo of them. We would talk about their favorite country to visit to, create more of a human connection there. But at the end of the day, we still thought that human teams couldn't scale to give customers what they wanted when there were emergencies. And that's where, when AI agents came in, we finally said, oh, wow, this will actually finally help us solve this. It's not just working around the real problem there and not providing the solution the customer wants.
Thank you for that. So for those starting out, what would be your best piece of advice and like pitfalls to look out for if we're just completely new to AI, but think it might have a place in our business? I know that's a big and broad question, but
no, if we start with the pitfalls, I think the first pitfall is the one that we already know. It's that implementing AI can reduce costs, it can reduce human work, but it can very quickly reduce the customer experience. And that is clearly the number one pitfall that we all see in real life when we use an airline chatbot, for example. And so AI can be implemented to not reduce and instead improve the customer experience. We genuinely believe that, even though you don't see it in everyday life. It just takes a lot more work. Like Will was saying, the prompting, it gets so tedious to to make it more human-like, to make it more to improve the customer experience. But it's very important there. And I think if you put the work in, you can use AI on the front end without reducing the customer experience. So that's the number one pitfall. The second pitfall is a bit of a funny one. What we noticed at FlightFox, we tried to empower the whole team to use AI in their daily work for data analysis and reporting, for coaching, for even building SQL queries to help them query the database, for responding to customers, doing all of that. Something we noticed is as people became really adept at using AI and quite obsessed with it, is they were, in the attempt to improve a process, they did create marginal gains in what they did, but it created more human work. And so the second pitfall I'd say is you can quickly use AI and then find that it's causing more human effort rather than reducing human effort. And I know that may sound a little counterintuitive there, but we've seen it in practice happen quite a lot. And like anything, like any new technology or something that you learn, you can start to become too reliant on it for marginal gain there. So without solving a top 5 problem in the company, you can start to create much glossier reports. You can do a lot more data analysis, but then you can find that to maintain a lot of these systems you've created with AI can take a lot more work than you've actually reduced.
So, and then last one, looking ahead, is there kind of any technology that you guys see coming down the pike? Anything, I guess, interesting or noteworthy that you guys are going to be working on or developing further that you think might be of interest to tour operators or anyone reselling travel?
I think when we think of AI in travel, we quickly go to the main functional areas. Like, let's say for us, it's support, or it's accounting, or it might be the booking tool. But what we're seeing internally, especially with FlightFox, which has a larger team than Humonic right now, is a lot of the team members are using it for their day-to-day work. And I mentioned leadership and coaching or data analysis there. And right now it's all operational AI. So they might get a chunk of data, put it into Gemini, ask to build a report and maybe an interactive report with it. And it's helping in their day-to-day jobs. What I imagine is going to advance from here are a lot more agent frameworks for people, non-technical people, to help improve processes as well. So right now, while they're using operational AI to just augment their work day to day, I imagine these agent builders will help build real agents that do end-to-end work. And we're already seeing it with Operator and with some of the voice AI companies. So Phonely, for example, will let you build out an entire multi-agent approach to handle voice support. But I imagine that's going to become more and more useful for non-voice and non-support in operational work day to day. So building agents, for example, if you get a customer request, you might use an LLM to decide how to reply to that, what systems to integrate with, to do some browser automation in one case, to call the email client in another case. And we think that'll improve quite a lot and make just the day-to-day work of everyone more efficient. Will, you might have something to add there as well.
Yeah, I just think there's, as everyone probably knows, there's between OpenAI and Google with Gemini and Anthropic and other big companies working on LLMs right now. So much money is being thrown at it that the models are only going to get better. The technology around tool calling is only going to get better. The voice, there's going to be, I think, in the next year or so, a lot of advancement in the voice space in particular, especially speech-to-speech models. So I don't know how much people know about the voice space, but traditionally, the way that the best models and results work right now are through speech-to-text and text-to-speech. But there's a lot of effort being now put into just speech-to-speech, and that will reduce latency and improve the overall quality of voice calls. So there's just a lot of money being put into these areas right now. So I think there will be a lot of changes, and it'll come if not by the week, then by the day as we move forward over the next year or so. But definitely exciting times. It's going to be You're definitely going to have to keep up on the news to see what all the cool stuff is being put out, because it's yeah, a lot of game-changing stuff is coming out by the day.
Will mentioned the tool calling there, Stephen, and that really moved LLMs from being a novelty in most business cases to being very functional. And so what tool calling means is just within the LLM prompt, if something, let's take a voice call. So with a demo that we have on the Humonic website, is the customer asked to change a flight. Tool calling means we can call the GDS API and actually make that flight change while they're on the call. Previous to this, all you could do is collect the data and then maybe present it to a human agent and they would go and action it. But agentic AI really has come a long way because of tool calling there. And as that improves, as it gets more organized, as it becomes more accurate, which it already is, that makes it much, much more powerful, being able to call APIs asynchronously in every direction.
Thanks, guys. I have one more question that just came in. Are you seeing any generational differences among, like, just in general, with acceptance of working with and dealing with AI, as far as, a customer's approach to it? The entitled baby boomers versus Gen X, Gen Y, or Gen Z, millennials. Are you seeing any differences there?
So probably best to split this into engineers and non-engineers, just for the sake of conversation. But engineers, definitely. So I'm one of the older engineers, and what we notice is that there is quite a bit of pushback, and we didn't get to start with AI engineering, and so we have different ways of thinking about how it helps and how it doesn't help, and the mess it creates. Whereas we're noticing with younger engineers who really came about in the last 5 years, while AI code generation came about, they're just moving a lot quicker. They're a lot less resistant to it, and they're picking up technologies much easier. If we put engineers aside, I think we're not seeing as much of that. We've all come up in the age of horrible chatbots that don't work properly and gotten our way to get to a human agent. So it's not like anyone was born early enough to not live through that. And so I don't think, Will, you may have a different answer to this, but I think we're seeing the older generation replace Google searches with LLM queries. We're seeing, the whole range of it. So not too much, to be honest.
Yeah,
Will, what do you
I
think?
think it depends on the quality of the AI. If the AI is able to give the person, regardless of their age or tolerance for AI, if it gives them a solution and it gets it to them faster than a human would, then I think they would have they wouldn't have a negative opinion of it. But if it is just AI for AI's sake, another crappy chatbot, then like Todd was saying, maybe the younger generation is more attuned to getting through to a human through whatever method. But it really depends, I think, on just for the result that the AI can deliver. I don't think anyone wants to deal with the same old crappy chatbot, regardless of whether they're that baby boomer or they're someone from the younger generation. But yeah, I wouldn't say we've seen much of a difference. It all depends on the quality of the AI, really.
Yeah.
From what we've seen.
The best support is the support that works, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
one way that we found and at least explored with some customers to implement this in a nice way is sort of giving the customer the option. Do you want to wait on hold for 10 minutes for a human, or do you want to chat with the AI now to see if it can solve your problem, and give the customer the option to choose versus just forcing something on their plate that they don't necessarily want. So there's different ways to handle, but obviously we're working towards and want to live in a world where it is indistinguishable between the AI and the human, and you just get amazing support immediately, regardless, and no one really knows or cares whether it's an AI. But I would say I don't think we're to that point yet, but that's what we're really working towards at Humonic and want to deliver for all travel companies.
Awesome. Well, Will, Todd, thank you so much for your time today. I think that was super informative and helpful for our community here. I know that Sagri has a couple closing remarks, and again, thank you guys.
Thanks, Steven.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers for sharing your insights and expertise today, and to our moderator for leading such an engaging discussion. Thanks everyone for joining us in this important conversation on on agentic and operational AI. A special thank you again to our TED Talk partner, Crum & Foster, for supporting this series. We'll be sharing a recording of this webinar along with any additional resources in the coming days. In the meantime, if you have any further questions or would like to get in touch, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at programs@ustoa.com. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at a future USTOA TED Talks. Have a great day.